It looks like you're moving strawberries.
I am moving strawberries. The drought has taken its toll.
Yeah.
And also the inability to keep them watered like they should be, shallow roots, soil is not really great here. And so they're almost all dead. So I'm looking for ones that have a little life left in them, that I can move to a better location and try to get them all together, the ones that are alive, and keep those watered. I remember back when we lived in Mentone, Alabama, that was, oh man, I don't know how many years ago that was.
Decades ago.
Decades ago. It was a long time ago. But I was a new gardener, and maybe we'd been gardening a few years. But we had some chickens, and we were in the middle of a drought. I think we didn't have rain for about 12 weeks. I remember looking out and seeing the rooster, and he looked like he was dying. He was standing on one leg, and I went in and read I had this big old book that somebody gave me on farm animals. So I went in and I read about chickens, and I determined from that book that he was having a heat stroke. So what I decided to do was, I thought I've got to cool him down. So I got some water and I ran out and I tried pouring water on him. Well, that was a big mistake, because what happened? Well, the rooster ran a little ways away, and that made him hotter, but I never could get the water on him. And I went in, and I wasn't really a Christian at the time, but I had started to pray. And I started praying, and I said, Lord, please bring rain. That's the only thing I can think of that would cool that rooster off. And I prayed, and I prayed, and I cried. I loved the rooster. And I think his name was Elrod.
Elrod, yeah.
Elrod. And so I ran in, and I just sat in the rocking chair and started to pray. And after I prayed, it must have been at least a couple hours. I just cried and prayed. And this cloud came up. It started getting dark outside. Now, we hadn't had rain in about 12 weeks. And I looked, I thought, can the Lord be giving us rain to answer my prayer? And you know, it started to rain, and it rained and rained. It really gave a good rain. And the rooster didn't die from the heat stroke. He lived. And as I talked to people in the surrounding area, I discovered that it didn't rain anywhere else. It mainly just rained at our house, maybe just right around there where we lived. And I thought, wow, the Lord does answer prayer. That was an amazing miracle to me.
Okay, when are we going to eat these strawberries?
I hope next April.
Next April?
Yeah, I'm hoping they'll make strawberries. I hope they live and make strawberries.
Well, the patience that we learn in the garden is, I guess, an essential lesson.
What's that lesson?
Prayer is an interesting science. It's kind of mysterious. To really believe you can pray to a God you've never seen, and He's in a place you've never been, and to think that your prayer will change your life and the life of those around you, it doesn't seem to make any sense, but I know it's true. You know, these are supernatural things. You know, if you try to apply natural law to these supernatural occurrences, you'll never understand it. It's only by faith we believe that when you pray, God hears and answers. Without faith, it's Hebrews 11:6, without faith it's impossible to please God. So I pray. I say, Lord, I need some help. So before I started this video, I prayed. Because I know without God, John 15:5, you can do, the Bible says, nothing. I found that to be true. So several years ago, I was invited to northern China, a big city called Yanji. And it was very, very cold there. I went there in January. It's not the right time to go. Everything was frozen up. And as I began to work in this health center, and they had some seriously ill people residing there as patients, they explained to me that you can't say anything about the gospel. You can't mention God. You can't mention the Bible. I started the presentations. We talked about beauty, talked about nature, talked about the health truths. And you can almost convey the full gospel story just using nature, using health. But the Bible gives a fullness to the message you can't find just looking out at green trees and the beautiful things in nature. First day there, I noticed there was a lady. She has some paralysis on one side of her face, her body, and she looked like she needed some help. I offered to give her some, physical therapy, some range of motion treatments. And so on the little volleyball court, we'd sit there and I would do these simple manipulations. And I think it helped her. Every time she saw me after that, after the first one, every time she saw me, she'd smile. Half her face would smile. The other half, she couldn't move it. After spending a week or two on aspects of health and healing, I asked the question, among the people here, because we've been talking about the beauty of nature, I said, among the folks here in this room, they were the guests, the patients in the hospital, I said, who is one of the most beautiful people here? And they all looked at the lady, the one that had half the face paralyzed. She just began to smile, because I think we all understood that beauty is not on the outside. Beauty is on the inward. There's an inward beauty. And this lady had a very kind heart, tender spirit. And had a nice program, had a nice experience, got to visit with a lot of people, got to eat some of the Chinese food, enjoy the Chinese culture. In fact, I spent some time in the kitchen, because when I go places, I like to go into the kitchen. That's the mission control center. This is where all the action is. And I did some dishes and began to talk to the ladies, and they couldn't talk me anything in English, and I couldn't talk their language. But I asked them about dessert, because I noticed in that health center, they never serve anything sweet at the end. The food was good, but there was nothing sweet. And I said, what about dessert? And they didn't understand the word. And I tried to, I tried to explain it. It's a hard concept to get across when you don't speak the language. Anyway, the next day, I think the lady came, and she had what she called dessert. She was excited. She gave me a bowl of beans with sugar on it, and I thought, no. In China, that may be dessert, but in Tennessee, that's not dessert. So the next day, she came out. She held up a date. It was huge, this date. And I took it, took a little bite off the side. I said, yes, this is dessert. And every meal after that, she'd bring me this date. That was my dessert, and it was a great blessing. And when the program ended, my cup was just running over. When the program ended, the families of the guests came to pick up their patients, and got to meet some of the families. Here's a picture of some of the family members that were coming to retrieve their guest. And there's a young lady on the front row there on the left that wanted to speak to me when I finished the last lecture, because it was the last day, the last presentation, and the family sat in on the lecture. And so when it was over, she came up to the translator, young man. This is a picture of the young man that was doing the translating, a really nice guy. And she asked him a question. He looked at me and he said, she wants to practice her English on you. She was a student and she was trying to learn English. And I said, okay, I'll practice. I'll let her practice. But the condition is I choose a subject. He told her, and she said, okay. She walked up to me. She said, my name is, I can't pronounce what she said. And I said, my name is Lew. And she said, where are you from? I said, Tennessee. I said, where are you from? She said, Beijing. And then I said, I choose a subject. She said, yes. I said, my subject is God. And she looked at me and she said, what is God? And I asked her, I said, why are you going to school? She said, I'm going to the university in Beijing. I want to get a good job so I can buy a nice car, live in a nice home, have good food, and buy good clothes, and I can go and pursue my career. And I said, well, those are all wonderful things. You need food, clothing, and shelter. I said, but you ask, God, what is that? Who is that? God is a being that created everything. And he cares very much about your food, your clothing, your shelter, your education, your job. He cares about all those things. But more than that, he cares more about you than he cares about all of those other things. You are first and foremost in his mind, in his heart. It's you, your heart, your mind. That's God. And she didn't know what to say. So we talked some more, practiced the English, and then when it was over, I said, well, it was nice to meet you. You have a pleasant day. May God bless you. Should we pray before you leave? And she looked at me again and she said, what is pray? I said, well, pray is talking to God. You just open up your heart and you talk to Him like a father and like a friend. Even Jesus said, Luke 11:2, when you pray, say, Our Father. He is your heavenly Father, and He cares much about you, His earthly daughter. And I said, would you like to pray? She said, yes. And so as I got ready, the translator put his hands together, and she did the same thing. She looked at him, she put her hands together, and I told her, I said, it's not necessary to assume any certain posture. It's necessary to have the heart open, to speak right from the heart, to be sincere, to be honest, to have substance in what we say to God. And He wants to give that same thing back. But the heart is the essential part of prayer. And so I prayed for her. I asked the Lord to help her, to heal her, take care of her. And she departed with the patient and her other family members. Never saw her again. But I see that God does things in answer to prayer. They will astonish us and amaze us. Often, the answer doesn't come fast. You may have to wait, but when you need it the most, the answer comes, it's sure. This is a cantaloupe, and yesterday as we walked by this plant, I said, the thing looks dead. And Darlene said, no, there's still some green on it. It'll grow. That's an optimistic way to be. Where I see no hope, Darlene says, yeah, it can grow. We just need to water it, pray about it, and see if it'll grow. I think there's life in the plant still. So my wife, when she looked at that little cantaloupe, she saw hope. And when God looked at me, and dear friends, when He looked at you, He saw hope. There's a nice verse in the Bible, and if you feel hopeless and nobody's praying for you, my dear friends, somebody's praying for you. Hebrews 7:25, it says, Jesus ever liveth to make intercession for you and me. May God bless you, give you a hopeful day. Don't forget to pray.